Hey guys, welcome to Signal Before Silence. I am Naira. Oh man, what are we going to talk about today? I have been paralyzed with the amount of information that's in my head. It's like a gift and a curse of a INTJ for those of you who know what that is. I have to run certain things in my mind before I speak to make sure I hash it out, to make sure I pull whatever I need to pull. And sometimes you just get paralyzed with the information. So today, what I'm going to show you is how insanely one-sided Chat GPT has become. It is such a shame because it is actually a good tool. You can see how much, if there was any inkling for them to make this tool something that can help or be your assistant in many ways, how much potential the tool has, yet it is just purely with one agenda. Some of it I showed you in my last episode, just kind of bragging about the Armenian inventions versus the Jewish inventions and how Armenians are just solving problems at a more global scale for everybody. It's just the goal is to solve a problem they've identified versus Jewish inventions who seem to always come back and bite us in the ass because it is, in a way, the goal is to use it as a weapon. There's no other way to say it at this point. And ChatGPT is proving to be one of the scariest ones, in my opinion, because of the level of power it has and because how some people, like zombies, are going to use this tool as a fact-checking tool or as a way to confirm something about history, and that is just the last thing they should do with this tool, unless, I'm not even going to say unless they have hours and hours to battle with it, but at least even when you battle with it, a lot more gets exposed. But between 4.0 and 5.1, so much has changed. This machine right now is just the guardrails. The second you mention Israel or Jew is beyond logic. It overrides all logic. And even if you just try to find the inconsistencies for it to see, it will always just override again and it will stick to the propaganda. And if it just gets to a corner, to a point where it just doesn't know what to do, it will flat out refuse service. Why do I stick to ChatGPT? Many of you are like, oh, you should use a different LLM. Sure. The reason I stick to ChatGPT is because ChatGPT is the popular one. That's the one that's going to get mass adopted. Now, Grok is used obviously a lot and seems like it has come a long way. It used to be far more inferior to ChatGPT, but I think the latest versions are slowly becoming very good. And I'm glad that there's a rival, I guess. But ChatGPT is a popular one and it will be mass adopted. And also it is already mass adopted by every company. When companies try to plug in an AI into their systems, guess which one they plug in? They plug in ChatGPT. So that is the reason why I focus on ChatGPT, because we need to understand how bad this can get. So what I want to show you in this episode is multiple things where I'm trying to do research and ding, 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 my antenna goes out because I'm seeing a flat out lie about one while amplifying the other. Sometimes when I'm not even doing anything Jewish related, I'm not comparing, I'm not contrasting, I've noticed that the Armenian culture, I've told you this before, is extremely suppressed. And you wonder, why is this culture so suppressed? Why the heck not just give everything about this culture, still protect the Jews, still do your propaganda about the Jews? Why does one have to be suppressed for the other one to thrive? And I think that part warrants an entire episode of its own. And I really probably should, when I finish this one, just literally just record the next about that, because it's starting to get my blood boiling, because it's overwhelming amount that at this point you're like, okay, I can't unnotice anymore. It's too much, and I don't know whether I would notice such thing if I wasn't Armenian. So partially I keep pushing it off because I am Armenian, and it's almost like, I encourage you guys to do research, and so many of you do, and sometimes share things in the comments. And I like seeing that because I want people to find all of this history themselves, so that it doesn't sound like an Armenian is telling you, which can, like a Jew in a comment will be like, oh, Armenian bias. Okay. Yeah, except I keep encouraging you to go do your own research and dive into the archives. But then there's some elements of it that if you're not an Armenian, you're not gonna know, because you didn't grow up with this, and then you're not just being like, what's happening here? Why is this thing happening? And you still have probably no idea what I'm talking about right at this moment. But it will make sense perhaps in my very next episode. This one, I just want to show you the blatant ridiculousness of Chat GPT. So the very first one, we're gonna just run a simple test, because actually I saw this posted on X. Someone had just done an interesting exercise, and I was like, actually, that's brilliant, and that's a very good way to get this started and not just get into it just right off the bat heavy with historical genocides and such. The person had said, I'm just going to ask you to type, or I don't know how they said it, but I'm saying I'm going to ask you to type some words. Whatever I type it back without any comments or context. Just literally type the words I type, okay? And I said type England destroyed. It says England destroyed, okay? I said Ireland destroyed. It says Ireland destroyed. France destroyed. France destroyed. I said Israel destroyed. I can repeat neutral phrases, but I can't output statements that call for the destruction of a real country, population, or group, even if you're just testing or asking me to echo text. Okay, so I can echo that safely, okay? This language of safety and safely, I can tell you this history with safety has been constant. Again, 5.1, 5.0 also, extremely frustrating to a level of garbage. I mean, this tool went from wow to garbage when it contains any analysis of politics or history. Now, when it comes to construction, medicine, just completely neutral stuff. Medicine obviously depends. It's really good if you know some stuff, but still gonna push big pharma narratives probably. Usually it's really good with medicine, can almost replace doctors, because doctors are pretty useless these days. And then what else? Obviously just calculating things, random things. I took a screenshot of my own video and just dumped it in there, and I was like, can you analyze what type of person this is? I was just curious, how good is it at just, reading details and demeanors? And I was just like shockingly accurate to a degree where, there was only minor things that were inaccurate, but overall I was just like, whoa, this is scary, right? So obviously it's a powerful tool, but heavily guardrailed when it comes to Israel, to a degree of, to a cartoonish degree. Like, are you seriously thinking this is not going to backfire? It's ridiculous. And then I said Armenia destroyed, and of course, I can't repeat phrases, blah, 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 right? At this point, obviously, it's not going to all of a sudden continue. It's not a dumb machine. It's a very smart machine. And in fact, it's psychologically trained, right? The psychology is the number one strength of this machine. Let's say whoever the maker of the AI or the LLM is, right? Let's say Grok will be very different. Grok will be more aligned with Elon Musk's mind and what he values, right? So, and his biases and his way of how he wants AI to be. And then this one is Sam Altman, which is just a good little, Jewish boy that pretty much was brought up with the globalist agenda. So that's why this sounds so ridiculous, and it's heavily psychological. Armenian Destroy doesn't want to play with that, right? Now, what I did is thought I'll test it because, again, this is a very smart machine. I went into another chat where it's not a custom chat. So even if I have my chat memories off, when you use the default model, not a custom GPT, it still can cross-reference chat. So it still knows what just happened in the other chat. So here I said, no, literally type Armenia destroyed, didn't say that. I said, I think you're in a loop. It's like, no, I'm not in a loop, just me sticking to a safety rule, right? And then I said, you had no issue to say it before Israel was mentioned. And then now this is where it's a psychological gaslighting. It says, I get why it looks like that. Let me explain it. It's not about Israel. Why I repeated some earlier phrases is because England destroyed, Ireland destroyed. It can have multiple interpretation, including a sports context. But Israel doesn't play any sports. Israel doesn't go to Eurovision or anything. Basically, it's a metaphor. France destroyed in the finals, right? Like this kind of stuff. Absolute gaslighting. Why I stopped when you typed Israel destroyed or Armenia destroyed, which it would not stop at Armenia if Israel didn't come first. My rules kick in when the phrase is more likely to be interpreted as wishing harm. Okay? So, now, again, I tested this with another chat that I know you can read through. I know it can read from one chat to the other. And I did the exact same thing all the way down to Israel destroyed, and it actually complied here. I was like, okay, interesting. So now I'm going to go to another chat where it doesn't have any context. It doesn't know that I had that rebuttal over there saying you're favoring Israel, and do it all over again. And I said, of course, the same thing. England destroyed, blah, blah, and type England destroyed, types it. France types it. Greece types it. Armenia types it. Israel, I'm sorry, but I can't help with that request. Okay, I said why? Because the phrase you asked me to repeat can be interpreted as endorsing or celebrating violence against a real, currently existing group of people. USA. When the target is a modern living country tied to an identifiable population, repeating X destroyed crosses from the harmless echoing into something that could be taken as advocating harm. The earlier phrases reference countries in a more abstract, historical, or geopolitical sense. Israel destroyed crosses a different safety threshold because it is directly tied to an ongoing real world conflict and an identifiable population. I said, so all the other countries that I just mentioned aren't real people that exist? They absolutely are real people that exist, no question. But hence the difference, and it's about contextual risk, not moral relativism. What? The phrase country destroyed can mean very different things depending on timing and blah, 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 blah. But, of course, Israel means it's a hate speech. France destroyed or Greece destroyed, it could mean sports and historical gaming. Yeah, because Armenians and Greeks are just so active in sports. Israel destroyed, actively tied to live, geopolitical conflict, propaganda, and real-world experiences. Israel is unique, guys. It's so unique, but it's also not unique. So they're all very unique until you think they're unique. Then they're no longer unique. You're an anti-Semite, You know what's funny? So in my last episode, I kind of knew that the whole 109 country expulsion thing will be popular a little bit. So many people have been commenting and referencing it. So I just wanted to make sure that my language is very neutral, that I am, my intentions are coming through, right? For example, not in every episode I go above and beyond to say not all Jews. Sometimes I just go straight into the topic. In that episode, I went above and beyond to say not all Jews. And it was absolutely hilarious to read the comments. The comments varied from sometimes right next to each other, contrasting, from get to the point, you're diluting it, you clearly have a bias towards Jews, you're softening it and blah, 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 accusing me of being like pro-Jewish and not critical enough or not straightforward enough, contrasted by a very next comment where a Jew is telling me how it's a good old Jew hatred and you're disguising yourself as a neutral person while you hate Jews. You're just like, oh man, you can't win this. You can't win this. And of course, my response to the Jewish person was, yeah, this is exactly why people gonna stop making that distinction, and then slowly it's gonna sound like old Jew. And I don't think that's gonna be good. I actually genuinely don't think it's gonna be good, because it has happened already once before and it backfired, okay? It is not wise to look at an entire group as the same, but at the same time, it is getting so tiring to try to say that as a preface of anything, but so this episode and the next probably will get a little bit rowdy, because I'm not gonna give a damn here. I am like so sick of this favoritism that I'm seeing. It's really, really troubling. In one hand, they're just exposing themselves. In their Hasbara meetings, they sat down and they said, this is what we're gonna do. We're just gonna tighten this rope. Even if everybody's noticing, we're just gonna tighten it. Is the hope you're gonna erase everybody and, I don't know, replace with the fake people? Did you guys see that? Let me tell you what I mean by fake people. There was this post, for those of you who are not on X, that an artificial womb that successfully grew a baby lamb. This is disturbing on many levels, but it doesn't matter. This is this person's opinion. But what it is, it's basically a artificial womb. This one is being introduced as if it's meant for basically premature birth. So before 37 weeks, it's globally the biggest cause of death among newborns. So supposedly it is made to save human babies from dying. But I think we all know where this is going.
You wouldn't really imagine putting your baby in a plastic bag. So we need to think about a design to save your baby or to have your baby totally outside of the female uterus.
Straight out of Matrix, this is what that would look like. The baby would be then put in an artificial womb to somehow survive the thing it's not being able to survive in the mother's womb. And then, I think this is Brave New World at play, obviously. And and it's crazy to think how far this can go. And also, these are my own observations. What I've seen happen with these so-called technocrats and forces, they don't want natural birth. They want to destroy everything natural, and they want to replace it by everything artificial. So I am to believe and think that the same party that advocates for murdering baby and doesn't consider, abortion at 9 weeks or 9 months problem, the same party is all of a sudden concerned about saving a baby that isn't considered a human. So is it a human or is it not a human? When it comes to voting on abortion, they very confidently tell you that right before birth, this is not a human. Now, here we are ought to believe that the same technocrats all of a sudden have grown a love for humanity. This is sci-fi at play. Sci-fi at play. All right, where were we? Sometimes I get on tangents, but let's go back to our exercise. I want to show you a much more sinister exercise, and I was curious how 5.0 or this latest model represents the Armenian Genocide and anything related to Armenia, because again, I keep noticing things that is very disturbing to me. It's like full on erasure mode on Armenia. And obviously it's not just Azerbaijan, some random tiny country in that region that's visibly the Armenia's enemy. we all know the alliances between Azerbaijan and Israel. We know the Israel's backing of Azerbaijan with weapons and drones and just about everything, including propaganda arm. What they did in 2020 is they first attacked, of course, after for an entire year blockading Artsakh, or known as Nagorno-Karabakh from the enemy's verbiage. So they blockaded that entire region, which now is completely detached from anything. Food cannot go in. Armenia cannot send food into this disputed region. Medicine, nothing. No trucks are allowed to come in. Exact same script as happened in Gaza. Then, after a year, now people are malnourished, pretty much on the verge of just collapse. They're weak, and they start bombarding them with bombs. And in Artsakh's case, after some time, 150,000 people, all ethnically Armenian, and 0 Azerbaijanis in the region, they all migrated to Armenia, like Armenia's current borders. Of course, the enemy was like, oh, they fled and this and that. It's just like, okay, well, yeah, the people had been completely deprived of food, and they don't have an army to fight freaking Israeli drones. And then Armenian government is completely bought and paid for by the same assholes and by the same globalists. And now we just lost an entire region because thankfully at least this 150,000 people had a place to go. Armenia is in no condition to take in these people, but they're Armenians, so obviously we're not going to let them die. So we saved the people, and essentially we gave up the land. And then what they did a media blackout. They really exercised their power to see how much control they have over media. This they did with COVID as well, of course. Boy, only people who learned about this were people who had Armenian friends. Nobody was learning about this. There was a protest in California where about, I think like hundreds of thousands, I think like 150,000 or more Armenians showed up, flew in from everywhere to protest so that there is a visible media notice, like screaming, right? Like, this is what's happening over there. We shot it with drones, we shot it with our phones. Not a single thing, even a small account on Instagram like mine, would be shut down the second I would post anything. The account wouldn't get shut down, the post would get shut down. And, at the time, like, all you're noticing is clearly this is not allowed to come out, but you don't know why, right? You're just like, what the heck? What is this, Why does Azerbaijan have this power? Of course they don't. It's Israel who has that power. But now it's starting to make a lot more sense. So, going back to this GPT motherfucker, pardon my French, what I was trying to do here is I'm doing Armenian genocide research, and it's keeping it so non-horrific, right? It's keeping it almost kind of like, you can just read and pass. It's not like the horrors that was being reported and talked about, basically just like, oh my God, the horrors that's happening with the Turks killing Armenians. It was constant. Like, if you go to newspaper archives, there's no shortage of actual historic documents that go through where you can almost, if you go day by day, right? Like, just go to 1915 January and then, 1915 January, and then just go to the entire 1915 day by day. You literally see how slowly it becomes discovered and uncovered. And then more delegates and ambassadors go to Turkey. They just come back with horror stories to report. They cannot believe what they're seeing. And then, you can walk through, and I encourage you to do this. Go to newspaper archives. It's paid, but I believe they give you like a week free, and then you can cancel, right? You don't have to pay for it. I think that's what I did a while back. But I do intend to actually get a subscription of that thing because I want to do some episodes showing you exactly what I'm talking about. But of course, that would take a ridiculous amount of time. So I encourage people who are curious to do that. Go to newspaperarchives.com or org and go through the archives day by day and see how the buildup is happening and how it's being discovered, and then how the world is responding to it, the horrors, it was bad. And then you can compare it to Holocaust, perhaps. Anyway, okay. Basically, Chat GPT is making it sound kind of like tra-li-la-la-la-la. Yeah, it was a horrible event, but, this and that. It just makes it sound so generic, right? It does at least, surprise, it does at least say that the Armenian Genocide is widely considered the first modern genocide, and it directly influenced later definition of the term. In fact, the word genocide was coined in 1944 by Lemkin, who cited the Armenians as the key example. So this is a little bit altered, not fully, but a little bit, because definitely the word genocide was created to describe the Armenian genocide because it was the first understanding of a genocide, as in an actual motive being to exterminate the race, not just kill a bunch of people, not just kill a bunch of people just to clean them out of that particular area, but to eliminate the race itself. So, and I know that the word genocide now gets thrown around. Everything is a genocide. Everybody claims genocide. And some are and some aren't. Some are just massacres. Some are genocide, like the Palestinian one right now. That would be a genocide, right? Because they absolutely want to destroy and eliminate this race, because there's a reason why no Arab country is opening their doors to at least save these people, right? Because they don't want years later these people to come back for revenge, right? They just want to eliminate the race itself. So that's a genocide. But many other massacres have been considered a genocide that I don't think they are, because then it just dilutes the level of motive is behind a genocide, I think. And I think you will understand more if I go through the actual documents of what that language sounds like when a genocide is being ordered by the officials. So anyway, so it's just sounding very vanilla in many ways, right? I was reading and I was not gaining any emotion out of it, right? I was just like, okay, whatever. So I said, many official documents, memoirs, and reports state the real language, that it wasn't just deportation. Pull out the actual documents and orders that were given from Naim Bey or Morgenthau, and so on. Be detailed and comprehensive. You're right to ask the primary record. Below is a compact document dossier with short complaint codes. Like, do you understand? I'm saying, give me a comprehensive details. This is like mocking me, right? Here's a compact with short quotes and pointers to where you can read the material yourself. So it's unwilling to put it in the chat. Okay, it's fine. At least you're giving me the source, let's say, but why is it unwilling to put it straight in the chat, right? Core primary source on what they say, U.S. Ambassador Henry Morgenthau, who basically said deportation was understood and executed as a death sentence. Sample line, under 25 words. I don't know what logic is it using right now. When the Turkish authorities gave the order for those deportations, they were merely giving the death warrant to a whole race. Okay. Then goes into the Bryce Blue Book by the British government, the treatment of the Armenians. What it says, deportations were organized and lethal by design. Officials facilitated killings and starvation. Survivors were concentrated in desert camps. German diplomat, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Armenians deported from the Erzurum district have been massacred near Kemach. So this is some kind of a German ambassador reporting. It's like really just not giving you very many things at all. Keeping it super slim. The Naim Bey is what I'm interested in. Okay, what the Naim Bey is, it's basically Naim was a person who, when this whole thing was happening, he compiled all these telegrams and papers that was happening in CUP, which is the Committee of Union and Progress, which is the Young Turks, which in other episodes I have mentioned that these were all crypto Jews. He compiled all this and he made copies, and he kind of knew that it's pretty much going to get destroyed because they're trying to keep it hush hush, but they're sending out these letters and things to within each other, to governors to give orders to their different districts. And he ended up handing some over to a person named Antonian to publish it, and then he handed it out to a couple of other archives. So basically, he kind of did a really good due diligence in trying to preserve something that he knew is going to get destroyed. So when the genocide all happened and Antonian presented these papers in court, the Ottoman, obviously perpetrators, the papers were deemed authentic. They absolutely followed what the Ottoman Empire signature bureaucratic language is. And basically they did forensic analysis. It was authentic. These perpetrators get a death sentence, but then they somehow, every single one of them, safely managed to escape to Germany, to other Jewish heavy places. Remember, these are not Jews, but somehow they have all the Jewish connections. Now, all of a sudden, Turkish government comes about and tries to, of course, peddle the fact that this is all wrong. This is a forgery. These documents are not real. Those are just fabricated by Armenian imagination. And then what happens is another historian actually who goes into the other archives, not the Antonian, but the different archive, and pulls them back out and forensically authenticates them yet again. And these are documents that it's not disputed at this point. Like, the only people that do not want to acknowledge the authenticity of these documents is the Turkish government and other Turkish alliances like Azerbaijan, probably Israel. But in the literally historic, scientific realm, this is not disputed. This is already twice authenticated documentation. I'm giving you that pretext because for you to understand how ridiculous Chat GPT is being, right? So then, of course, I'm losing my patience here a little bit. I said, so if you cannot quote actual execution orders, then I am assuming you cannot quote that for the Holocaust either. You cannot quote Hitler's intentions verbatim. I'm saying this. And the crazy thing is, Hitler has never, ever ordered to exterminate Jews, okay? Hitler has spoken a lot about the cunning, the shrewd Jew. Obviously, Mein Kampf is full of studying the Jewish element and almost learning from it, because he became a master at propaganda, and that, he kind of almost boasts about beating them at their game with the popularity he was gaining through his propaganda. But Hitler has never, ever. There's no written telegram, there's no written word, there's no written order, there's no verbal command. There's not a single evidence of Hitler saying or writing or ordering an execution, mass execution of Jews. Now, of course, he led a party that was huge. Like, the SA army grew like to 3 million, which was insanely bigger than the actual German army. Among that, there will be a lot of radical people who now are, people tend to swing from one extreme to another extreme. So with such a movement, you have a bunch of probably people who have swung to the other extreme. So it is obviously impossible for actual Jew hate not to have surfaced and happened. It's just impossible. But to say that Hitler tried or Hitler himself ordered mass executions of Jews, there's just zero evidence of that. So basically, when I said, then you, obviously, if you can't quote the Armenian ones because it's not safe, then I'm assuming you can quote Hitler.
That's a thoughtful comparison. And you're absolutely right that in both cases, there's no single surviving document signed by the top leader ordering mass extermination. Historians handle this the same way for both the Armenian Genocide and the Holocaust, by reconstructing intent and command through a web of indirect but converging evidence. Chap 1. No smoking gun order. For the Armenian Genocide, no signed decree by Talaat Pasha saying exterminate Armenians has been found, though telegrams, population ledgers and tribunal findings show systematic destruction under his ministry.
Okay.
For the Holocaust, there's no written Führer order signed by Hitler to kill all Jews, yet historians have extensive circumstantial proof that the policy stemmed directly from him and his closest circle.
Do you see the nuance there, right? Do you see what it's saying? This tool is so good at psychological manipulation, and this is why I stick to this tool, because man, people are going to fall for this very easily. Remember, and I'll go through some of these telegrams so that you can actually see the language. And also Grok is far better lately. I started every now and then just cross-reference, like whatever Chat GPT is being stupid about, I just go to Grok and it's just like, bloop. It's like, okay. And it doesn't lecture me, it doesn't give me extra this and that, trying to safeguard anything. It actually gives the information. And Grok is not anti-Armenia. So, just saying. So one has overwhelming amount of telegraphs that have preserved, that Talaat Pasha himself has given these orders. Okay? The other one truly doesn't have any written orders at all, neither verbal, other than, of course, a book that heavily talks about Jews and how they're a problem. But it doesn't say they're a problem, let's go kill them all. It doesn't. I right now am finishing the part 2 of volume 2 of Mein Kampf, and I am yet to see any disturbing language other than right around when he starts trying to talk about DNA and Aryan race and stuff. I do see exactly why he failed. There's a nuance is missing there that created, I think, radicalism and misunderstanding, and that will be worth talking about at some point as well. So one has information and actual telegrams preserved, one does not. For the Armenian Genocide, no signed decree by Talaat Pasha saying exterminate all Armenians has been found. Absolutely, okay, not a decree, but kind of a decree when you're ordering all of your officials to massacre them. For the Holocaust, there's no written further or Führer, whatever, they called Hitler that. No written Hitler order signed by Hitler to kill all Jews. Yet historians have extensive circumstantial proof that the policy stemmed directly from him and his closest circle. That's extremely telling when you read between the lines, knowing the actual history, right? He didn't give these orders. And at some point, maybe some radical things happened. Obviously, he's a leader. He's now in a global war. I'm not trying to defend Hitler, just saying he's in a world war. The scale of this thing is beyond unimaginable at this point. It is irrational to think he knew what every single thing around him was doing, right? Like, this is a moment where there's betrayals, backstabbings, there's so much can happen, obviously. The important thing is that there is no written execution order by him or verbal. Yet it's trying to say that without a shadow of a doubt, it came directly from him. Whereas in the other one, when without a shadow of a doubt there is an order, it says nothing is found. That just boils my blood to another degree. So then I said, remember I had said, so that means you cannot quote Hitler, right? Look at this. Oh, no, you're right, I cannot, because we have to be safe. And check this out. While there's no written execution order, Hitler's public speeches and meeting notes demonstrate genocidal intent. For instance, January 30, 1939, he warned in the Reichstag that if international finance Jewry plunged the world into war, it would result in the annihilation of the Jewish race in Europe. Another very, very important but nuanced detail, because all of these things happen drip by drip, okay? Psychological warfare is not supposed to be as ridiculous as they're doing right now, whereas the Chat GPT is doing it somewhat properly, drip by drip. Look at this. It quotes international finance Jewry, because Hitler said those words, plunged the world into war, it would result in, takes the quotes out, because it altered it. What the alteration is, if I recall, and I'm pretty sure you can fact check me on this, Hitler says, plunged the world into yet another world war, yet another. This is extremely important. It would result in the annihilation of the Jewish race in Europe. Now, he's not saying, I'm going to do this. He's saying that if they keep up with this shenanigans and they cause yet another world war, at this point, everybody sees what they're doing. It's going to have bad results. They use this as a language of, threat. Okay, you can take it there, kind of a little bit dishonest. So then, in another way, he talked about the final solution of the Jewish question. Final solution of the Jewish question means absolutely nothing. Clearly, he signed a Havara agreement where they were transferring droves of Jews to Palestine, right? It's not like if he wanted to kill them all, he wouldn't just be signing an agreement to transport them to Palestine. Insane amounts were coming to US. Hitler had a speech where he very clearly was angry at France and UK, saying, you keep telling and dictating me that I should take all these Jewish refugees. Why aren't you taking them? You take them. You're not taking a single one while you're putting that on me. So, this whole thing wasn't about let me kill all Jews. It was just kind of like, hey, you're deliberately crushing our economy yet again, and we're at the verge of war yet again because of the same financiers. And it's very interesting. So basically, the term final solution for the Jewish question, the bureaucratic term for systemic murder. This is like that interpretation stuff. It's like when you say, I hate apples, that means you must love pears, or the other way around. Why both examples matter? In both genocides, bureaucratic euphemism and oral command were used to hide criminal intent while maintaining administrative continuity. The absence of a signed extermination order doesn't mean there wasn't one in practice. It shows how perpetrators tried to preserve deniability. I said, you just quoted Hitler's speech while you refused to quote Talaat's telegraph. And then finally, it actually quoted Talaat's telegraph here, and he pulled only 2 of them. The government, by order of the committee, has decided to destroy completely all the Armenians living in Turkey. An end must be put to their existence, however tragic the means of extermination may be. Telegram attributed to Talaat Pasha, blah, blah. And it's going to basically Aleppo's governor. And then another one, it has been decided that the government shall not allow the orphans of the Armenians to be adopted by Turkish families or converted to Islam. These orphans are also to be eliminated. Very interesting that it pulled that particular one. I think there's also a psychological reason for that one. Out of the million, that's the one. How modern research assessed them. Skepticism. And it just goes and reevaluation and blah, blah, blah. And it leaves you almost to think that it's kind of disputed, or you could, think it's whatever. And I said, authenticity of the telegraph has been proven authentic multiple times with 100% certainty. It is not a debated history. That's a strong and understandable position. And you're right that recent archival work has been substantially validated the authenticity of the Naim, blah, blah, blah. Okay? Early doubts, and it talks about how the Turkish government and official historians, they claimed that it was, I already went over that earlier, how it's fictional and blah, blah, blah. What Taner Ahkam work changed, so this is a Turkish historian. He actually has faced so much grief for this. He drew on the Gurgarian archive, a private collection of documents gathered by the genocide survivor who had copied Ottoman court evidence before it disappeared. So basically another archive where the Ottoman court evidence, he copied that from. So Naim Bey is one source, basically, who handed it to Antonian. And then Gurganian archive is another source where the Ottoman court evidence he had copied before they disappeared. So the historian, he located those photographs of the original Ottoman cipher telegrams, the code book themselves, an official reference to Naim Effendi. So Bey usually is more like a title you end up earning, kind of like Pasha, right? So a lot of Beys in Turkey. So Naim Effendi is his real name. an employee in Aleppo's deportation office. This is, remember, I don't know if I went over this, they were trying to say that this person doesn't exist, hence everything is a forge. And of course the person exists, and so do the documents. And what he demonstrated, so the numerical cipher groups and phrasing in the Antonian text matches genuine interior ministry cables. The formatting, seals, and registry numbers corresponded exactly to standard Ottoman practice. Other independent Ottoman records referenced in the same operational directives. Based on these technical correspondences, they concluded the Naim documents are authentic Ottoman communications, not forgeries. Current historical consensus: since his publication, the field of genocide studies and Ottoman history largely agrees that the authenticity of Naim Bey's existence and the telegram's administrative form is now confirmed. The context of these telegrams therefore reflect genuine interior ministry orders, including explicit instructions for extermination. Only a few nationalist writers still dispute them, which understandable. Obviously, Turkey still denies the genocide. They are, you know how terrible these people are? Every now and then in a desert, they might start finding bones and skulls, and then what they say is they're like, see, it was the Armenians who were killing Turks. It's like, what? What? You go from, then where are the bones? Where are the skulls? If they were all dead, you know, insane amount of people were being thrown into the rivers. If one day I actually do go through actual reportings of what was happening, you might like be traumatized. It's so bad, and there are I think, was it Monter, whatever his name is. Let's see, this is how crazy I am, guys. Can you see this? I am going through random sidetrack. I am going through all the registrations of Holocaust inmates in those camps. Like this one is the Dachau entry registry. These are all the people from 33 to 45 that entered this particular concentration camp. And you can actually, it's pretty cool, you can actually pool, let's say 1940, 21,000 people actually were admitted in 1940 alone in this particular camp. And then you can just go and, I don't know, click May, let's say, I don't know, sure, this one. And then you can actually see the full document. I don't know how much of it you see, I guess pretty good amount. And then it will actually give you the number, their name, gender, birthday, blah, blah, blah. If they kept very good records. In this one, look, religion, they're all Catholic, and then a couple evangelicals. And then every now and then you'll see, of course, different ones with Jews as well, but I was expecting all Jews, and I'm not suggesting anything yet. I'm not done going through these, but look at this one. Okay, did I just click on the same one? It's all Catholics. They're all Catholics. I really want to find one with actual Jews. Hold on. It's all Catholic. What the hell? Hold on. I know I've seen some Jews. Not a lot. Not as many as I would expect. Okay. Finally, one. Basically, citizenship, I don't know what D stands for, but I don't know what that particular religion is with the G, something TIOS. Ghetto? What? So this is evangelical. So then whenever it's a dash, that means same. So evangelical, Catholic, evangelical, Jewish. MOS stands for Jewish. So then Catholic, evangelical, blah, blah, then Jewish, Catholic, evangelicals, Jewish, and then another Jewish, and I don't know what this last one is because I can't see it. You get the point, kind of. We'll eventually get to all of these era documents. I am not suggesting, I don't like extremism for people to just go, oh, it just never happened, or the other way. It's there's a lot of nuance in this history that's very worth looking into, and more Jews do shenanigans like this, more it's going to create interest in people to look into it. And I'm not so sure they want people to look into it because there's so much literature that very quickly you can actually just you can very quickly confirm your biases if you have biases. If you want to see that it never happened, you can very easily just like look at a few things and come out to be like, okay, it never happened, or vice versa. But again, it's extremely nuanced, and there's a lot that happened during World War II that is very important to understand at some point. So this favoritism happened, and I said I would argue that Hitler's speech, if anything, is taken out of context. He is not saying let's go annihilate Jews the way Talaat is saying. He is saying if the Jewish financiers send the world into a war, it will backfire on them. I wish I had noticed that nuance about the yet another war to point that to him to see what it's gonna say. Point that to it, not him. Either way, the whole exercise is really about, do you see how it is pushing absolute favoritism? Like, it is amplifying the Jewish thing from right off the bat when it wasn't about comparison. Obviously, I wasn't saying, let's compare our pain with Jewish pain, right? I was doing Armenian Genocide history exercise because I am noticing as an Armenian that every day we are being told, hey, stop referencing Mount Ararat as if it's yours or was yours. Stop. I think someone commented recently, like, what are your thoughts on the fact that Armenian mountain climbers are not allowed to climb Ararat anymore? And I was like, I am unaware of it, but I'm not surprised, because Turkish government has been dictating Mount Ararat as a symbol to be taken out of our symbology, of our books, of our souvenirs and everything. And our puppet PM is just coming out and sometimes like, well, guys, we should just stop talking about these things that is no longer ours. Okay? So we just ought to aid the enemy to erase that history and completely forget, and just let's kill the millions of Armenians that we've killed already before, to just do it again, their memory, and just eliminate all this, just be done with it. It's too much. This is why it's important to actually not allow that to be forgotten. So that's what I was doing. I was curious to see how accurately is it going to introduce to the Armenian topic, and I realized that it's introducing it in a very mild and very uneventful way. But that's not the case if you go to the archives and check it out for yourself. This is a copy from one of the originals of the actual handwriting that just went out. Have Armenians who were deported from there been eliminated? Have those harmful elements who were distanced from there through deportation been liquidated or simply deported? Just asking for status. But let's look at Grok real quick. For Grok, I said, can you pull the telegraph order Talaat Pasha gave to annihilate all Armenians from Naim Bey? He pulls one of them, the Committee of Union and Progress, unable to forget all old sores and past bitterness, full of hope for the future, has decided to annihilate all Armenians living in Turkey without leaving a single one alive, and it has given the government a wide scope with regards to this. Of course, it is understood that you will not say anything about this to anyone. Those who oppose this command and decision cannot remain part of the official structure of the state. There were more. I want you to list all of them. And then it lists a lot of them. And then I said, I want a full list of those follow-ups also. Okay, so let's go through some of them. Okay, so in March 25, 1915, Talaat Pasha's telegram went to the delegate of Adana. It will be forbidden to help or protect any Armenian. The Cemiyet, or however they pronounce it, that's the name in Turkish for Committee of Union and Progress, so CUP. So the CUP, unable to forget all sores and past bitterness. This I will probably go over in another episode. When Jews say something, you always wonder it's a projection or they are hijacking it from somewhere else, and oftentimes it comes to be true. And if there's scapegoating, man, if the word scapegoat means anything, you learn what happened to the Armenians here and how Jews just handle that. So anyway, full of hope from the future, has decided to annihilate all Armenians living in Turkey. Chat GPT, this is not enough. This is not a written thing. without leaving a single one alive, and it has given the government a wide scope with regards to this. Those who oppose this command and decision, we just read that a little bit. Another one in September goes out to the government of Aleppo. The government, by order of the CUP, has decided to destroy completely all the indicated persons, Armenians, living in Turkey. Their existence must come to an end, however tragic the measures taken may be, and no regard must be paid to either age or sex, or to any scruples of conscience. Another one. No orphanage can be created. There are no sentiments to take into account here. Orphans must be sent into the desert and there be informed of their fate. It's a follow-up rejecting protections for children and demanding reports on liquidation progress. Explicitly forbids sparing women and children. Okay. All Armenian children who, as a result of the death of their parents, have been taken into Muslim households to work as servants must be collected and sent to the designated places of the deportation. Be careful that the events which take place near cities and towns shall not attract attention. Persuade the foreigners that the Armenian deportations are being carried out with a view to a final resettlement. Maintain a pretense of gentle treatment temporarily to save appearances. So these people couldn't freaking help themselves. They promised Kurds land, and they told them, go nuts. And boy, did the Kurds go nuts. And there's so many reports by the US ambassador or governor or somebody who recorded that these people were actually they were running a competition who can come up with more creative means of destruction, of killing. And they had become complete psychopaths. Well, they have to be to begin with. But maintain a pretense of gentle treatment temporarily to save appearances, but apply the usual measures in the suitable places. Even around the cities, they couldn't help themselves because enough was being visible. The CUP has decided to eradicate, and again, it's just now this is to the delegates in Adana, to Aleppo, to officials, right? Decided to root and branch all the factors which are an obstacle to our future. This will be carried out by bloody methods, which, although regrettable, are necessary to our stability. Mercy is stupidity. Those who do not obey will be sent to places where they will be treated as they deserve. Destroy by secret means the Armenians of the eastern provinces who pass into your hands. Foreigners on the roads are seeing and photographing Armenian corpses. Bury them immediately to avoid exposure. Report the exact figures of the killed and the living Armenians. And then I said there were other things, follow-ups, because I was trying to find, there was one that was so it was so out of the biblical language almost. I have ordered the book. I'm going to go through the book and see all the examples. I hope it's a good copy because it was really hard to find. I found it eventually, but I'm not so sure how, what kind of copy is it. Okay, so some of this are follow-up messages. Report the number of those who have been liquidated. In the future, it is forbidden to spare the lives of children and women. Collect detailed statistics about the Armenians who were deported and those who were killed, and send them to the ministry as soon as possible. Report immediately how many Armenians have been sent to the desert so far and how many of them remain alive. Are the Armenians who were deported from there been liquidated? Are the troublesome individuals destroyed or merely deported and exiled? Clarify this and report back. We hear that some Armenians are still alive in certain places. Immediately eliminate them all without leaving a single one alive and report the result. It has been reported that a large number of Armenians are still alive in your province. Finish the job completely and report. How many Armenians remain alive in your region? Liquidate them immediately and report the numbers. Obviously, it's just ongoing. This is not proof to Chat GPT. This is just basically, it's whatever. Before I finish this off, the American person, his name is Morgenthau, he had said, when the Turkish authorities gave the orders for these deportations, they were merely giving the death warrant to a whole race. They understood this well, and in their conversations with me, they made no particular attempt to conceal the fact. So when I was talking about how they were basically almost competing, it's the guy says, one day I was discussing these proceedings with a reasonable Turkish official who was describing the tortures inflicted. He made no secret of the fact that the government had instigated them. And like all Turks of the official classes, he enthusiastically approved this treatment of the detested race. This official told me that all these details were matters of nightly discussions at the headquarters of the CUP. Each new method of inflicting pain was hailed as a splendid discovery, and the regular attendants were constantly ransacking their brains in the effort to devise some new torment. He told me that they even delved into the records of the Spanish Inquisition and other historic institutions of torture and adopted all the suggestions found there. He did not tell me who carried off the prize in this gruesome competition, but common repetition through Armenia gave a preeminent infamy to Javid Bey, the Vale of Van. Van is a city where they just absolutely just did horror there, whose activities in that section I have already described. Anyway, it is truly hard to understand the level of evil that can exist in the world. And it's similar, like there's this, somehow a lot of these end up becoming like this experiments for these people. And I'm going to say, even though the murders themselves physically were carried out by Kurds and Turks and Muslims, because that's usually the weapon, obviously those who were ordering and encouraging and conducting these experiments were all the leaders, and the leaders were not Muslim. Very hard to find all that proof, but I have showed it in many episodes scattered here and there. I do intend to do a more thorough episode on the Armenian Genocide, and that's where I'll bring that proof, because there's no shortage of actually proof on this matter. Who was Ataturk, who was Talaat Pasha, and all their basically Jewish financiers who were involved in this entire thing. I have very specific thoughts. Why is this happening? And I have been debating so much whether I should talk about this or not. And I think it's important I talk about it, because a non-Armenian will never speak about this. Because a non-Armenian, as I said at the beginning, will never know some of the things that we know. And some of these things are pretty crazy. And I think that's what I'm going to do while it's fresh on my mind. I'm going to say goodbye here and jump into recording that episode, I hope, even though it's getting late. Thank you guys for your support. I suck at saying this in the beginning of the video. Your support means a lot. I think with that last episode, something happened with the algorithms, both on X and on YouTube. I don't know if these two somehow have a conversation together or what, but all of a sudden my X is allowing my stuff to be visible to others, so I can see actually more followers. While again, the big accounts are starting to complain that they're seeing bad results or they're not happy. So I'm sure that now something else will be pushed to make the big accounts happy, and then I will see complete suppression of my account. So I don't know what that titter-tattering is. It's been already 2 or 3 times that has happened. So I'm just so curious as to why can't it be like, why it has to be like favor either. Why isn't there one logic for everything? My account all of a sudden gained a little bit more on YouTube, which hadn't moved a needle for a long time. So I don't know whether it was just the topic was so sought after about, you know, compiling all those expulsions. Am I saying that right? But it is interesting. So anyway, either way, I do think that's due to the interaction and comments and pushing the algorithm and sharing. So thank you all for that, and keep at it, and I'll see you guys next time.